It's interesting to me that Scorpio is, you know, the second water sign of the zodiac. And many people who don't know the elemental associations by heart mistakenly associate Scorpio with a fire sign. But it makes so much sense to me. You know, Scorpio's associated tarot card is death. And death's ruler is Hades, or Pluto. And Pluto is the ice planet. So it is this fiery form of water. You know, water can maintain solid, gaseous, or liquid state. And there's this solidness to ice, right? But you add that flame and it can melt into vapor and then transform into water. And it gives us this beautiful picture of what is really behind death, that concept. Because spiritually speaking, energetically speaking, there is no such thing as a final end. There is no ultimate rest. All atoms are in this constant state of motion. You know, that's a law of vibration in Hermeticism, which is that all things are, there is no such thing as rest. Everything is in a constant state of vibration. And what death truly is a process of transformation. You know, after death comes rebirth. And there's like this copulation process that's included. You know, Scorpio is a sign of taboos, and sex goes perfectly in with, you know, these concepts of death and, you know, dying to the old self, transforming what you used to be, transforming energy in yourself and therefore in the outer world. All of that comes with a lot of resistance and pushback and like desire for it to not be so, you know? But if we embrace these processes, if we understand them and recognize the growing pains that are associated with transforming into something new, you know, I think that we can come to a place of a little more bare awareness of what's happening, which is basically, I think, the purest stance to take when death shows itself to us. Like in the death card, there's this little boy, tiniest person, who's seeing death coming. And what is he doing? He's on his knees, yes, like the older girl. But unlike her, who she is looking away, like she's open and receiving the state, but she's, you know, still in a sense of resisting being aware of what's happening precisely. But that little boy, that the closest, you know, the closest being to source, essentially, in that picture, is looking up, wide-eyed, watching the transformation happen, watching all these processes happen, and being aware. Because they know they just came from, you know, a place where you don't feel as if you're alive as you know, and now you're here. They know there's nothing to fear. They know that death is simply an invitation to watch the resistance that comes up in the form of the priest in the card, the death card, and to watch yourself soften to the humanness and the necessity to relinquish things, even though it's hard. You know, the getting on your knees essentially and opening up to that process, but still that pain and that mourning that comes with losing old parts of ourselves. But you know that alchemists had a word for this process. Mortificato, I believe is how you say it. But it was, blessed are those who mourn. And it was meant to say, if you are mourning the loss of the old self, if you are mourning the loss of these pieces of you that felt comfortable. Interesting, Scorpio's polarity is Taurus. Uranus is transiting Taurus for the next 6 years. And that's a very big disruption of our comfort zones kind of theme. But if we are in that state where we're willing to accept Okay, I've got to let these things go and also accept our human nature to become attached and to become comfortable and to mourn the process of letting these parts of ourselves go, letting these old stories go, letting these old relationships go, letting these old patterns go. Because, it's really our familiar that becomes our comfortable. And familiar does not ever indicate whether something is good or bad for us, or let's say growth oriented or fixed oriented. Familiar is familiar, and that is what we are comfortable with, and that's what keeps us stuck and unchanging, is our grasping to that. But if we can just allow the awareness that death is coming to these parts of ourselves, so that we can start, maybe holding funeral rites for the death of parts of ourselves, instead of simply, trying to control ourselves and trying to whip ourselves into shape, which can be such a narrative, especially if you are born in a Western culture and raised in this mindset of constantly performing and constantly achieving and constantly becoming. But if you are simply ready to accept that death and accept that there is going to be a mourning and a grieving period for old things that used to feel comfortable because they were so familiar, then you are one of the blessed ones who has initiated themselves to the path of transformation, to rebirth. I also think it's so funny that at the time of the proposed first tarot deck, thought to be first created for a royal family in the 14th century, the word transformation was not yet a popularized word. I did a little digging, and it doesn't even appear in literature anywhere until the late 14th century. So by no means was this a common term of understanding, but there is so much symbolism in those first decks where it really is like just the skeleton with a scythe, and these body parts in the ground growing up, It was trying to drive home this idea that if you sacrifice the old self and you let yourself become nothing, what you're seeding is a new being. What you're seeding is openness and space to become what you desire to be, instead of what you have been programmed to be, conditioned to be, familiarized with being.